It is the show that shakes the Southland Clemson sports talk each and every afternoon on Fox Sports Radio 1400. And, of course, on Mondays, he joins us right at 5 o'clock. William Qualkenbush. Qualk, what's up, buddy? How you been?
Swanee, it's been a great weekend. I hope you're doing well and excited to get back at it here on a Monday.
A little bye-week blues, though. I'm going to be honest with you. I've never in my entire career being on the radio, I don't think I've ever uttered that phrase, but for whatever reason, I kind of have the bye-week blues.
You know why? And I won't say this is different from when it's ever been, but hear me out on this.
Okay.
I think I have figured this out, okay? And in a matter of moments, I think I've diagnosed you because, Clemson has historically had a really hard time going into bye weeks. I would suggest to you that in the recent past, going into a bye week with a close win or a haphazard or lackluster performance, you've basically been ready to get out of Dodge and take a deep breath.
Okay.
And exhale and just like, okay, there's a lot on the table for this team and thank goodness you escaped and that's that. With this group, it's a bad taste because they've already lost twice and you've got this bad taste in your mouth from the game itself. And you feel like you want to see this team go play. Like it was an exciting thing, I think, for Clemson fans to watch this team play and grow and mature and sort of find itself. And then everybody just kind of got dropped on their head on Saturday with Wake Forest. Maybe that has something to do with it because I've kind of been thinking that. Like, why? This is not new that Clemson would sort of limp into a bye week, but I think it's because of the way the season went before that week before the bye week that has us in a little bit of a tizzy right now.
You may very well be on to something. Again, follow him on Twitter at Qualk Talk. Maybe that's what it is. I just want to go see this team play. Want to see maybe a tone for the weekend that was 17-12, the final score. I thought it was hilarious, though, Qualk, because a year ago, Clemson and Wake Forest played this game where nobody can stop anybody, 51-45 double overtime. And fans came out of that game going, well, we're just not any good. And then this year you have the kind of exact opposite and feel, well, we're just not any good. I thought to myself, Clemson Tiger fans may only be happy if it had been 51-12.
Well, and I think this particular game, that's true. I would suggest that fans were pretty wrong about this game last year. If you thought it was a referendum on you, the fact that Wake Forest took it overtime. I mean, Wake Forest pretty good, Swanee. Last year. This team stinks. I don't mind saying that. It's different this time because this team's not any good. That offense is putrid. That offense should not move the ball and score on Clemson, period. And the defense, I think, is probably better than people thought, but it still is not very good. I mean, this is as close to like a classic Wake Forest that like your older brother or your daddy's Wake Forest as you're going to get under Dave Clawson. They're just they're definitely missing Sam Hartman. They're missing a couple receivers. No Donovan Green. It's just not the same caliber team that we've seen in years past, and that's a team that you should beat by a million. Clemson's that national championship teams that beat Wake Forest by 50 or 60 points, and you're over here struggling to beat them by 5 when you were kind of thinking that you were getting better. That's another thing too. You had 5 games where it felt like you took a step forward to some degree every week, and this is the first time that you really have taken a step backwards really all season from the Duke game. And I'm not saying that they're back below where they were at the Duke game, but I kind of felt like this was the worst performance when you consider that maybe the defense was a little bit better than it was at Duke. And the opponent certainly was a lot better in Duke. But the offense was just significantly worse, and I think the expectations have been raised for the offense a little bit after the way they played the last 2 ball games in particular. Again,
William Qualkenbush with us every day, noon until 3 o'clock, out of bounds with Qualk and Ben, 105.5 The Roar in the upstate. So, Qualk, I mean, there's a lot to obviously digest from this game, but I think one of the things that probably still surprises people in a lot of respects is Adam Randall. And we know the comments Dabo Swinney made last week about Randall, saying that, it was the inconsistencies that they've seen from him. It's incredible to me that given the situation, Antonio Williams not being able to play, that you're not seeing more of Adam Randall. And there was a key play in that ball game where Hamp Green's out there running routes, And no offense to Hamp Green, but I can't believe that Adam Randall doesn't have more opportunities at Clemson right now. It's shocking to me, Qualk.
I don't know what's going to happen with the coaching staff. I think sometimes people and then look, everybody's got a difference of opinion. I'm not saying I'm right on this, but I think sometimes people are too hard on coaches when players are perfectly capable of doing things without being told. But I think one of the weaknesses that we've seen with Tyler Grisham in particular the last couple of years is that guys have not been consistently available and productive. And I think both of those things to varying degrees fall on him. I'm not saying he's got to wave a magic wand and heal everybody, but you have to make sure that the guys who are there, who are available, if you got guys that are hurt, you have to have guys available that can play. And you have to make sure that of that group, that you've got enough to be able to cover like a 2-deep depth chart. Unless some catastrophe strikes like what we saw in the receiver room a couple years ago, where you literally have 2 guys on scholarship. Now, I was not let me say this. I was not super outdone with the Hamp Green inclusion, simply because who else you going to put out there? Tyler Brown had his worst game. I didn't feel great about throwing him the ball. Salado was kind of in and out. He had a drop. Brenning Stool has brought you almost nothing in the pass game. He's averaging 6.8 or 6.9 yards a catch. Much less yards in a tenth, where it's like 4.5 or 5 yards in a tenth. So, I mean, to me, you're just running out of options. And then you got Williams, who's hurt. Would you rather have Spector out there? I mean, that guy's been at Clemson for a million years and has never done anything except what we saw Hamp Green do. So I think probably I would say you probably shouldn't have thrown a little flare or like an RPO screen to Hamp Green. Probably not a great use of your resources there. But it speaks to all it takes is an injury and 1 or 2 guys having an off game, and all of a sudden all this depth that everybody's been talking about, Dabo's been talking about in the receiver room, doesn't look so deep. And it goes to a broader point, Swanee, that I just want to say quickly. I don't want to belabor this unless you really want to. But I think sometimes when you lose contact with elite, you forget what it looks like. When you lose contact with elite and then you go to something else, you pretend that the thing that's better than what you just saw that wasn't elite is elite. It's kind of like how you see bad and you think whatever you're not seeing is as good as you think that the thing that you're seeing should be. It's like what we do with the backup quarterback all the time. We're not mad because we think the backup quarterback might be moderately better than the starter. We're mad that the backup quarterback's not playing because the starting quarterback is bad, and therefore what we don't see is going to give me what I think a quarterback should look like. That's the fallacy of people always belly aching about backup quarterbacks, is that what you think the backup quarterback's giving you is never what they're actually going to be capable of giving you. I mean, I would say 95 times out of 100 that doesn't happen. So I think all of that is sort of playing into a wide receiver group that for the first time this season looked like the 2021 group and looked like the 2022 group. And I really thought those days were behind us, but it showed us how fragile the ecosystem is in which Clemson is operating right now.
No, that's a great point. And I think, the thing that you said about, thinking great or seeing great or whatever, that kind of your first statement, I go back to what I keep hearing Dabo Swinney say about Cole Turner. And I'd like to believe that, right? I'd like to buy it. I know he's out injured, but I can't put him, regardless of what Coach Swinney says, I can't put him on the same, in the same stratosphere as some of the guys that have come through in recent years, from Nuke to Sammy to Mike Williams to T. Higgins to Justin Ross. And I'm not necessarily saying that Dabo Swinney is comparing him to those guys per se, right? But with the way he talks about him, and he's going to be a superstar, that's what fans are going to expect to see.
Yeah, and listen, I understand what Dabo's saying, just like I understood what he said. I mean, we had Ben Buller on our show, and he was livid when Dabo said that the 2016 team stunk for 4 games, and this team was way better than that group, and that group ended up winning a national championship. And he took offense to it, and I understand what Dabo was saying. I also understand why he was offended, because here's the thing. You can chart and stat everything, and I love charting and stat and stuff. But the difference between a team that checks the boxes on paper and the championship teams that we've seen at Clemson is undefined. It's the intangible stuff. It's the will to win. It's the over preparation. It's the accountability that comes from players and from coaches to players, and that you sort of see bearing out on the field in a healthy manner. I mean, those are the differentiating points. So you can tell me that, and I'll say that all of that creates a context in which players sort of interact. So, like when Dabo was talking about Colt Turner's as good as we've ever had come through here, well, guess what? The other as good as we've ever had come through here, guys, had other as good as we've ever had come through here, guys. I mean, I'm not saying that Dabo said that, but, when you've got Sammy Watkins and Nuke Hopkins, think about what Nuke was, and I understand that he's a year younger, but think about what Nuke was before Sammy Watkins got there. I mean, we talk about Sammy Watkins coming in. He immediately elevated that receiver room, but it certainly helped that Nuke was there. And guess what? Jerron Brown looked a lot better when Sammy and Nuke were there. So, like, just saying that a guy's as good as we've ever had here, or he's got a chance to be as good as we've ever had here, or, this guy does a lot of things like X really bad, really good player, and
right.
He's an upgrade from X really bad player. Those are things that I think make sense, but if you don't have the context that the previous guy had, then it looks different, if that makes sense. And so I feel like that's where the disconnect is coming here, that, like, Dabo's, he likes to heap praise. He's just a super optimistic guy. We know this. But he's heaping praise on individuals without considering how that individual mixes with the collective that is not as good as some of his predecessing teams.
William Qualkenbush with us here on the program. So after Clemson fired Brandon Streeter a year ago, given what we'd seen from the defense, I thought this was a make or break year, perhaps for Wes Goodwin, who I understand he's the co-defensive coordinator, but he's the guy that's making the calls on game day. Qualk, 6 games in, bye week looming. How do you evaluate the job that he's done? Because I'm going to tell you, man, I feel like he's done an amazing job so far.
Well, I think he has done a really good job, and there are elements that aren't as good. I think the run game is not as good. That may not have as much to do with him as just bodies. I actually think not having Walker Parks has taken some of the teeth out of this offensive line group. For whatever reason, I think Will Shipley is not running as well as he did in his first 2 seasons. I can't really pinpoint anything. I mean, people say he's put on weight and he's not as explosive. That doesn't have anything to do with whether you see the hole or not. And I just feel like he's not in a real good groove. But Garrett Riley was coming in to modernize and to put the teeth back into Clemson's passing attack. And I would argue that he has done that from a conceptual standpoint. There are players like Tyler Brown and Troy Stellato and Bo Collins who are available and who are growing into roles on this team that are, that have a chance to be in those roles for 1 additional year or more. Cade Klubnik has taken some baby steps. I think he still has some things he needs to work on, but Garrett Riley's done a really good job with quarterbacks, and he's done a good job with older quarterbacks in 1 year. It's the first time he's really had to, in a while, at least, that he's really had to take on like a project for multiple years.
Right.
So I mean, I guess that remains to be seen, but this offense is significantly better than the past couple. And like I said, the main way is that the way they're attacking in the passing game, you can tell that they're not just relying on individual talent, but they're relying on scheme. They're not just relying on the quarterback being on the same page with the receivers. They're actually scheming the receivers open. They are using motion to identify and then to create mismatches, and then they're exploiting those. The offense has plenty of things you can work on, but I think in that element, what we're seeing right now is night and day from what we saw a year ago.
Yeah. Now, I think when I think about the offense, you just brought up the motion and stuff. I've never understood why that's not an every play type deal, right? Like, if you know the formation, the way you're going to have it set up, why wouldn't you want to get a little glimpse of what the defense might be giving you?
I mean, wait, can you repeat that? Sorry, you went in and out just for a second, Swan.
Oh, sorry. No, I was saying, like, I've never understood offenses that don't take a peek by having a man go in motion at what type of defense you're in. Like, I don't get it when you just line up and snap the football. It's never made sense to me.
Okay. I apologize. That was on my end. I love the way they use motion, and I like that they use motion for two things. Like I said, they're using motion to identify. So you're trying to see man or zone. You're trying to see how you can manipulate the box a little bit with motion, and how you can manipulate your coverage look. And then secondly, they're trying to create a mismatch or create a bunch or create some sort of situation where receivers can rub off of one another. That to me is a big deal, and that's something that we saw some under Tony Elliott. We saw it some last year, but we haven't seen a lot of in the past few years, like not to the level that we are right now. Another thing that they're doing a lot of that I think is a little bit of a departure, and I would have to go back and look, but pulling linemen. It feels like there are linemen pulling on every play right now for Clemson. And I don't recall that amount. Obviously, there was some pulling guard, pulling tackle stuff. There's some, there's some stuff like that. But I don't recall as much of that as we've seen already. The Rileys, Lincoln and Garrett love the GT counter, where you're pulling the guard and tackle and you're sort of kicking out with the backside of the line. And you're almost like reimagining the line of scrimmage that way to create holes. Clemson's run a lot of that, and I think that's something that's still a work in progress. But yeah, I mean, I think some of this is creating an opportunity for Cade Klubnik to have a better, more cohesive pre-snap read so that everybody's on the same page. You know what I also think has been a good thing? I was worried about changing the protection that calls from the quarterback to the offensive line. That's something that didn't get a whole lot of play, but that's very different from what Clemson's done in the past. Some do it that way. Some have the quarterback. I understand it's different source for different folks, but it was so different from what they've done. I was kind of worried about being on the same page there with the protection. I have not noticed that being a significant issue at all. So I think the transition there has been pretty seamless as well.
Again, on Twitter at Qualk Talk, just a couple more minutes with him. Okay. I said this, or I tweeted this during the game, and ironically, it happened just before Cade Klubnik had a big scramble for a first down. But, quote, one thing I think that's noticeably missing from this offense is designed quarterback runs. You saw it a lot with Deshaun Watson. You saw it a lot with Trevor Lawrence. And it almost feels like this coaching staff is just trying to protect Cade Klubnik. And I was watching the Southern Cal game. I brought this up earlier. And there's the reigning defending Heisman Trophy winner, running design quarterback runs. I think that's got to be a bigger part of this offense. And I think if they would make it a bigger part of the offense, I mean, I'm no offensive coordinator, but I think this offense would take off pretty quickly if you had the extra hat in the box and let one of the running backs like Phil Maffa be kind of a lead blocker in some scenarios.
I don't disagree. I'm going to tell you why I think they're not doing it. And again, this is not gospel, so I could be wrong about this, but it stands to reason to me that Klubnik, first of all, not a great between the tackles runner. So a lot of those design quarterback runs are going to be between the tackles. Secondly, if you watch the way Klubnik scrambles, he's not a quick first step guy. Like Deshaun Watson was quicker than he was fast, and he'd kind of make a guy miss, and he was shifty and could maneuver a little bit. Kelly Bryant was a little bit like that too. Klubnik's got some pretty good straight line speed though. You see him outrunning defenders to the corner. It takes him a little bit to get going. And I wonder if the numbers in the box on run calls or like the RPO game or something like that, if they've tried to take some of that off of Cade's plate, just because his strength is when he can get in space, and it's harder to do that with design runs and the tackles. Again, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think Cade does need to be more involved in the run game, and it needs to be more decisive on giving and keeping and first steps and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a point of growth that we need to see. But at the same time, I think sometimes the best thing to do for Cade in the run game is to give him a pass look and then allow him to use his instinct to be able to move, to be able to move out of the pocket and to outrun people to the spot.
Again, follow him on Twitter at Qualk Talk. Qualk, buddy, always appreciate you, my man.